Overtime in the Nursing Profession by Nam Vu. Drinking an energy drink to finish this on time. Now, what is overtime? What is it? Overtime is all paid and unpaid hours worked by a worker that is in excess of the normal 40 hours. So, how does overtime affect nurses? So, in the simplest terms, tired nurses are worse nurses. Someone's tired, they can't really work efficiently and effectively as they normally would. As nurses are people, they get tired, they don't have enough rest or alone time to recuperate after working, so more overtime just puts on more stress onto them. So nurses are people, so being tired affects more than just their work. This can range from their diet to how much they sleep. Do they get enough time alone? So I found it really interesting how when people think about overtime, it's just how it affects people in their work, but not how it affects them at home. Like how it affects, are they doing okay? Are they eating enough, drinking enough water, etc., etc. Look at this video. This is a 100% real example of a nurse working too much overtime and feeling fatigue and exhaustion. According to Wheatley, common injuries reported by nurses include needle, stick, and musculoskeletal injuries, fatigue, illness, absenteeism, burnout, job dissatisfaction, and turnover intent. Absenteeism, burnout, job dissatisfaction, and turnover intent are very weird when you look at them because they themselves will cause more overtime. Less people show up, people want to leave more due to higher turnover intent. And so it really puts into perspective that overtime itself can actually lead to even more overtime just because less people will want to work.
I, a nurse, am feeling fatigued and tired and burnt out from the overtime I'm working at my hospital due to understaffing. Looks like I'll have to call out and make my colleague work overtime instead of me. Wow, Dave called out. Looks like I, Phil, will have to work overtime even though I'm experiencing symptoms of overtime, such as needle stick and musculoskeletal injuries and illness.
Effects on patients. Some effects on patients can be not severe, such as poor patient care, but it can scale up very drastically, such as the wrong medication for a patient, medical complications, such as mishandling that can lead to pneumonia or an infection, or death,
I'm so tired from overtime that I want to give this patient something to get it over with. Here's your meal. Oh, sir, I'm allergic to it. Just drink it. But I'm allergic. Don't drink it. I'm tired. I want to deal with you.
Stop. I know for a fact, if you're taking this class, you're planning on being a nurse. If there's one thing that I hope you take away from this, it's that overtime will make you tired. Just make sure that you know when you're tired so you don't put your patients and your own life at risk. Wait, what's this? It's the ANA, an angel sent from above. Overtime bad, sleep good. The ANA stance is that they believe that nurses need adequate sleep and rest to do the best they can. The ANA recommends the normal 7 to 9 hours of sleep for a nurse. Now, this is because the more you sleep, the more alert you are. And for nurses, this means better patient care. They're better nurses because they're more awake, and it lowers the risk of injury. And remember, as I stated before, the injury is not only to patients and how nurses can make medical errors, but also to themselves and how they can keep themselves healthy so that they can continue serving the patients. Laws and regulation regarding overtime in nursing. At this point in time, there is no widespread national regulations or laws that particularly pertain to overtime in nursing. However, there are many state laws and regulations and legislations that regulate nursing overtime. First and foremost, I'll be focusing on New Jersey. So point number 1, the work week has to be under 40 hours long. That doesn't include overtime. However, the normal standard working week in New Jersey for nurses has to be under 40 hours. Now, mandatory overtime in New Jersey is illegal, meaning that hospitals cannot force you to work extra hours if they are understaffed. However, you yourself can choose to work those extra hours. As of 2015, all the states above have made it illegal for nurses to work mandatory overtime. From the states listed in the prior slide, these are all of the states, as of 2015, that include extra protection for nurses. So what that means is that mandatory overtime is illegal in all these states. And on top of that, nurses do not face repercussions if they refuse overtime in these states. So a hospital could discriminate against a nurse for refusing that overtime, In all of these states, that's completely 100% illegal. Shift requirements vary from state to state. As stated before, New Jersey has a requirement wherein there is only 40 hours in one work week. However, another state, such as Minnesota, has a shift hour limit instead of weekly hour limit, where in Minnesota, nurses are only allowed to work for 12 consecutive hours in a row. Now, other states have a rest requirement. So in Maine, after working any overtime, a nurse is required to have 10 hours of rest. Failed legislation for overtime in nursing. The Registered Nurse Staffing Act of 2015 was a bipartisan bill that didn't pass. However, it would have amended Medicare. From this act, Medicare participating hospitals would have been required to have a nursing committee. These committees would have been primarily focused on improving patient care. That is very key. Now, the way it would have done this is it would have assigned every unit different nurses depending on how many patients were in that specific unit and if those nurses were qualified. Now, you might find an experienced nurse, but you might have a different nurse who is less experienced but more proficient in the specific field of that unit. The Act also will provide two very key features in the protection of nurses. So there will be whistleblower protection. Number one, very important because if a hospital is overworking their nurses, the nurse could be the whistleblower and leak out the information and not face the consequences. Also, under this act, hospitals will have been required to report publicly their staffing and overtime information. The second failed legislation is the Patient Safety and Quality Care Act of 2015. The law would have implemented a required nurse-to-patient ratio nationwide, meaning that every hospital would have to have X amount of nurses for X amount of patients, so that there weren't too few nurses for too many patients in that particular hospital. The refusal of assignments allowed two things. Number one, it would have allowed nurses refuse assignments if it broke the ratio requirement previously stated, or it would have allowed nurses to refuse assignments altogether if they felt like the patient's safety was at risk because they're not qualified, not educated enough, or they're not proficient enough in a specific area to take care of the patient. Now, why look at laws that fail to pass? No, they show very important things. First and foremost, there's an effort made to pass these laws and that people are aware of the issue. Number two, lawmakers are conscious of the fact that hospitals are having staffing issues and were trying to pass it, however, they did not get passed. And thirdly, something's being done at the federal level. Even though most of the laws are at the state level, it shows that the federal government is trying to improve the lives of nurses. The ethics of overtime in nursing. The first ethical principle being focused is the ethical principle of fidelity. Defined by the ANA, this principle requires loyalty, fairness, truthfulness, advocacy, and dedication to our patients. It involves an agreement to keep our promises. Fidelity refers to the concept of keeping a commitment and is based upon the virtue of caring. Now, can the best patient care be given when a nurse is overworked? No, I literally spent most of this PowerPoint telling you that if a nurse is overworked and tired from overtime, they cannot give the best patient care they can. There's a break of commitment when a nurse comes in to work tired, overworked due to overtime, because they cannot perform their best to the patient. Now, does that mean that normally a nurse must give 100% of themselves to the patient 24/7? No, but they must give the best care that they know they can to the patient. But since they're already tired from working overtime, so on and so forth, they're not able to give the best care they can. The second ethical principle being focused on is non-maleficence. Non-maleficence is defined as the avoidance of harm or hurt, core of medical oath and nursing ethics. Now, can nurses harm patients if they're overworked and tired? Yes! I literally talked about it earlier, about the side effects of improper patient care due to overworked nurses, from bad patient care or, death being the worst one there is. Key words here: avoidance of harm or hurt. Now, these words, very important, just because if you are tired, you're more likely to make mistakes that will harm or hurt your patient. Now, if you are fully abled, of course, you'll still make mistakes. You're still human. However, if you're tired, these mistakes become a lot more prevalent and, can harm the patient. And what's really harmful? Death. Death hurts a lot, because dying's not good. In my opinion, overtime in nursing is not bad. It's the abusement of it by medical institutions such as hospitals which make it bad. For example, if someone calls out of work, or a nurse wants to make more money, they can work overtime, take over that shift, or take over another shift. Bada bing, bada boom, they have more money. However, if a hospital is like, yo, I don't want to hire more nurses, I'm just gonna use the nurses I currently have and make them work more and make them exhausted and tired, which reduces my patient care. That's when I start to have issues with overtime.